quiet highway, a black woman in a gray sedan notices flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Her 10-year-old son sits in the back, humming softly under his headphones. She calmly pulls over, expecting the usual license, registration, routine check. But the officers who step out aren't here to talk. Their posture is tense, eyes sharp, hands already ready for something more than questions. Within moments, she's on the ground, injured. Her son, terrified, is being dragged away. They think the situation is under control. What they don't realize is who she just called. A man trained for high-risk extractions, a man who doesn't lose people, and he's already on his way. Before we go on, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. Because tomorrow's story, it connects to this one in a way you won't believe. That night, the highway felt too still. The kind of still that makes you check your mirrors, even when nothing's behind you. Renee kept both hands close, one on the wheel, one resting near her lap. Her shoulders were tight, but the low music on the radio helped her keep it steady. It was 9:42 p.m. She'd promised she wouldn't stay long at her son's friend's house, just a quick pickup, back home, quick shower, and bedtime before 10. Malik sat in the back, relaxed, head against the window, blue light from his tablet glowing across his face. He was humming something she recognized, an old Kanye track Derek used to play when Malik was younger. For a second, she smiled. Then, headlights flared behind them. Fast. She glanced at the mirror. A police cruiser. No lights, no siren, just right on her tail. Too close. She blinked, signaled, moved over. It followed. She adjusted her speed. The cruiser held its place tight until finally red and blue lights kicked on. Renee exhaled, pulled onto the shoulder under a patch of trees, and parked. She tapped on her hazards. Malik didn't notice, still lost in his screen. She didn't say anything to him. Not yet. 2 doors opened. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed across the still night. Renee rolled her window halfway down and placed both hands visibly on the wheel, exactly like she'd rehearsed too many times in her mind. She caught a glimpse of them in the mirror. Both white, mid-30s, tall, that rigid walk you only see in uniforms. "Evening, ma'am," the one on her side said, tone clipped but professional. "Where you headed?" "Just going home," she said calmly. "Picked up my son. We're almost there." "What's your name?" he asked. "Renee Coleman." "You own this car?" "I do. Want my license and registration?" He nodded. She moved slowly, deliberately, retrieving her wallet, then reaching across for the paperwork in the glove box. She handed everything over, steady. He took the documents but didn't look, just stared at her face for a few seconds too long. Then, without a word, he walked back to the cruiser. The second officer stayed, on Malik's side now, watching, leaning, looking into the car. Renee saw him peer inside. Malik hadn't noticed yet, still tapping through a video. Then came the knock, sharp. Malik jumped. Renee spoke quickly, voice firm. "Sir, my son is 10 years old. He is not part of any investigation." No response. He kept looking. She turned, gently touched Malik's arm. "It's okay, baby. Just keep your headphones on." Malik nodded slowly, headset back on, but he kept glancing between the officer's eyes and hers. The first cop returned, still holding her license, now barely gripping it between his fingers. "Registration checks out," he said, but his voice hadn't changed. Then came the line that didn't feel routine anymore. There was a report earlier tonight, a vehicle matching this description. Vehicle with a similar plate sequence was flagged earlier tonight, the officer said, his tone now a touch sharper. Possibly stolen, headed this way. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Renee didn't flinch. "This is my car, purchased new last year, financed under my name. You have the paperwork in your hand." "I see it," he replied, "but I still need you to step out of the vehicle." She blinked. "On what grounds?" "Routine check." Her voice stayed calm but firm. "You said everything checks out. I've done nothing wrong." "Ma'am," he said, now dropping the courtesy tone altogether. "I'm not going to ask again." And just like that, everything shifted. The mask of politeness peeled back, just slightly, but enough. Enough to feel it in her chest, the way silence thickens when you're alone and someone else decides you're the problem. Out here, on a deserted highway, with no headlights in sight and no witnesses to hear her say no, being difficult could become dangerous. Renee opened the door slowly, hands visible, careful not to let it swing wide. The gravel cracked under her shoes as she stepped out, adjusting her blouse against the breeze. Officer Maddox, his name now visible on his badge, stood too close, not out of concern, but control. His eyes searched her face, not with curiosity, but calculation. The second officer, Renaer, still hadn't spoken. He stood by the passenger side, his gaze locked on Malik. "You said you were coming from a friend's place?" Maddox asked. "My son's friend. We were there 10 minutes. "What's his name?" "Carter. His mom's name is Alicia. Last name?" "I don't see why that matters." "It matters when we're trying to verify your story." She kept her expression neutral. "I told you the truth. We're heading home." Maddox gave a dry smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Funny," he said, nodding toward her car. "That's what a lot of people say when they get caught in someone else's ride." Renee didn't react. "You've seen my ID, my registration. This car is legally mine." He didn't respond. Instead, he said, "Pop the trunk for me." "I'm not consenting to a search," she replied. That made him pause. He tilted his head. "Come again? You don't have a warrant, and I've done nothing to justify a search." Maddox exhaled slowly, stepping in just enough to make her shift her stance. "You think this is about law? Out here, it's about making sure everyone gets home in one piece. You, your kid." "I've got nothing to hide," she said quietly. "Then open it." "No," she said, steady. "I'm not required to prove my innocence through illegal searches." They stood like that for several long seconds. No movement, no sound, just pressure. Then Maddox turned and walked back to the cruiser, her documents still in his hand. Renee looked toward the car. Malik had taken one headphone off. He was watching now, his eyes wide, his little face bathed in the soft dome light from inside the vehicle. Renaer spoke, voice low but cutting. "Everything all right here?" "She's being uncooperative," Maddox answered. "Might be hiding something." Renee raised her voice, not shouting but clear. "I've answered your questions. I've complied. I won't agree to an illegal search." That earned a scoff from Maddox. "You read that in some pamphlet?" "I know my rights," she said. "Yeah?" he replied, circling toward the back. "Well, out here the courts usually believe a badge over a roadside lawyer." He tried the rear door. It didn't budge. Renee had locked it when she stepped out. "Unlock the door," he said flatly. "No," she replied. "My son is 10. You don't need to talk to him. You don't have reason to remove him." Renaer took a step forward. "Ma'am, we're conducting an investigation." "There is no investigation," she said. "You stopped me for nothing, made accusations without cause, and now you're trying to intimidate my child. That's enough." "Unlock it, now!" Maddox barked, louder this time. Renee drew a breath, measured and steady. "I will not." That was the moment it snapped. Maddox's hand moved fast. Not for a weapon, but for his flashlight. Heavy, metal. He swung it hard against the rear window. It didn't break, but the impact echoed like a gunshot. Inside the car, Malik jerked away, his small body twisting in fear toward the middle seat, away from the glass. "Open the door!" "Stop it!" Renee shouted. Renee tried to move toward the car, but Renaer blocked her. "You're interfering," he warned. "He's a child." "Then act like a parent and start cooperating." Before she could respond, she heard the quiet click of Malik's door unlocking from the inside. The sound felt deafening in the tense silence. Her heart dropped. "No," she said instantly, trying to push past Renaer, but he grabbed her arm, spinning her back toward the shoulder of the road. That's when Maddox yanked the door open. Malik sat frozen, eyes wide. Tablet clutched tightly against his chest, like it could shield him. Maddox reached in without hesitation and gripped the boy's arm. "Out!" "He didn't do anything!" Renee cried, struggling to break free. "He's a child!" He's in a flagged vehicle, Maddox snapped. That makes him part of this. She stumbled on the gravel, nearly falling, but Renaer shoved her back hard. Renee hit the ground with a sharp cry, her knee scraping against stone. Malik was now out of the car, being led away by the arm. He was trying to stay upright, but his breathing had changed, quick, shallow, uneven. Renee recognized it instantly, that quiet, invisible panic that had haunted Malik since he was little, the kind that hit during fire drills, thunder at night, or when Derek was deployed for too long and the house felt too big. His lips parted like he was trying to pull in air, but nothing was catching. She tried to get up, but Renaer stepped forward, placing his boot against her shoulder, not to injure, just to keep her down. Maddox reached for his cuffs. Malik's eyes darted wildly, his chest heaving. The tablet slipped from his hands, shattering against the pavement, the screen blinking, and then fading to black. He wasn't resisting. He was confused. His arms flailed slightly, but not in protest. More like he couldn't understand why the world had flipped so suddenly. Renee screamed his name, voice cracking, but the boot on her back kept her down, grinding gravel into her skin. Maddox wasn't looking at her. His focus was still on Malik, but not with concern. Just routine. He pulled Malik's hands behind his back, cuffing him. The man's large hands nearly engulfed the boy's arms. "Stop, please," Malik gasped, voice thin. "I didn't do anything." "Then stop moving," Maddox barked, cinching the cuffs tighter. "They're hurting," Malik whimpered, twisting slightly, just enough to cry out as the metal bit into his skin. "Please," Renee begged, rising halfway. "You're hurting him. He's not fighting you. Just let me—" Renaer shoved her back down again, harder this time. She hit the gravel with enough force to knock the wind from her lungs. Dust filled her mouth. Her arms shook beneath her. Malik tried to speak, but it came out as a choking sound. His knees gave out, and he sank to the road, his body trembling uncontrollably. His eyes weren't focusing anymore, his lips pale. His voice cracked as he rasped, I can't see." Renee froze. That wasn't just panic. That was something else. The edge of collapse. "Please," she whispered. "He's going to pass out. He needs help. Let me up. Just let me help him. I'm begging you." "You want to help?" Renaer growled. "Then cooperate." He grabbed her wrists and snapped cold metal around them. She didn't fight, not because she accepted it, but because Malik had gone still. His head hung low, his small body limp. "I want my mom," he whispered, barely audible. "I want to go home. I didn't do anything." Maddox shifted his grip, holding the boy up like he was weightless. "Then maybe don't ride in stolen vehicles." "It's not stolen!" Malik cried, his voice breaking. "It's our car! My dad bought it! Please, please don't take me!" He sounded so young then, younger than 10, like a little boy who couldn't understand what he had done wrong. Renee had seen him cry before, comforted him, protected him. But this was something different. This wasn't fear. This was breaking. "Why?" Malik sobbed, the words stumbling from his throat. "I didn't even get out. I was just listening to music. Why are you doing this?" Maddox finally let go, dropping him to the pavement like a bundle of clothes. Malik curled in on himself, face pressed to the asphalt, breathing ragged. Renaer yanked Renee to her feet, the cuffs biting into her wrists as she staggered. "You're going to stand right here and not move," he ordered, dragging her toward the front of the SUV. "My phone," she stammered. It was by the back tire." "Please, this isn't right. I need to call my husband." "You should have thought about that before you made this difficult," Renaer snapped, tightening his grip on her arm as he dragged her toward the front of the SUV. Renee's eyes swept the ground. In the dim light of the cruiser, something shimmered just beyond the back tire. Her phone, half buried in gravel, still within reach. She let her body sag slightly, forcing Renaer to jerk her upright with a muttered curse. "Can't even stand?" "I feel lightheaded," she whispered, shifting her weight. "Too fast." "Then lean," he said, bracing her against the bumper. He didn't notice her hand moving. It drifted low, pressing to the ground. Slowly, carefully, her fingers crawled through the dust. inching toward the edge of the phone. Behind her, Maddox was speaking into the radio, asking for confirmation on a plate report, his tone casual. He didn't expect a match. That much was obvious. This wasn't about stolen vehicles. It never had been. Her fingers closed around the phone's edge. She brought it close, shielding it under the hem of her blouse. The screen came alive, emergency dial already open. She pressed just one number. It rang, once, twice. Then a voice answered. Renee? Derek's voice, calm but alert. Her own cracked with urgency. They've got him. He can't breathe. Please, just come. Now. She didn't hear the footsteps, but she felt the shadow fall across her. What do you think you're doing? The voice was loud, fast, angry. Renee's boot landed beside her knee as he lunged and snatched the phone from her hand. It clattered across the pavement, still connected for a brief second before going dark under his thumb. I told you. No phone, he barked, his tone no longer polite, no more performance, just raw hostility now. Renee's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She raised her hand slightly, not in defiance, just to show she wasn't resisting, but it didn't matter. Renee grabbed her collar and yanked her up. The sudden motion made her stumble, shoulder slamming into the side of the SUV as she tried to catch her balance. Behind her, Malik let out another broken cry, still on the ground, still cuffed. His breath came in fast, uneven bursts. His whole body trembled. Renee tried to turn toward him, to speak, to calm him, but Renee grabbed her jaw and forced her to look at him. You think this makes you special? He said, his words sharp and close. You think attitude's gonna save you? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was enough, and that's what pushed it over the edge. Maddox moved before she could brace. His hand struck the side of her face, a heavy, unrelenting blow that knocked her clean off balance. The world tilted. Renee's legs gave out. She dropped to the ground near the front tire, her body twisting as she fell. One hand caught the ground just in time. The other instinctively reached for her cheek. Warmth spread instantly. She didn't cry out right away. The pain was there, sharp and rising. But what came first was the shock, the ringing in her ears, the confusion of impact. Her fingers came away sticky. Her skin throbbed with every heartbeat. Something sharp had cut just beneath her eye, carving a hot line across her cheekbone. Mom! Malik screamed, his voice cracked and raw. She tried to turn, tried to push up, but her hand slipped in the gravel, and she went down again. Stay down, Maddox growled above her. What is wrong with you? She whispered, barely able to hold her head up. I told her to stop, Renee muttered to the radio, already spinning a version of events no one had asked for. She kept reaching. I didn't reach for anything. Renee tried to speak, but her voice gave out mid-sentence. The taste of blood coated her mouth. Malik's cries didn't stop. They spilled from him now, wild and helpless. Please stop. Please don't hurt her. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Just stop, please. Renee forced herself up, not fully, just enough to lift her head. She needed to see him. Malik was curled near the back bumper now, his body small and crumpled, knees drawn to his chest, his hands still locked behind him, his face twisted in panic. Tears streamed freely, unchecked, and he couldn't even wipe them away. Tiny streaks of tears cut through the dust on Malik's skin. Maddox crouched beside Renee again. Here's how this is gonna go, he said flatly. You keep your mouth shut, stay where I put you, and your boy stays quiet, before this turns into something much worse. You hit me, Renee whispered, her voice trembling from a mix of pain and fury, while I was cuffed. You know that's assault. He gave a small shrug. No body cam, he said. No witnesses. Just you and me. Renee let out a dry chuckle and wiped a hand down his face, as if this whole moment was just a nuisance. I called my husband, Renee said slowly, her words thick with determination. He's on his way. Then he can watch this happen too, Maddox said. Maybe he'll learn something. He's not going to let you lay a hand on his son. Then he'll get his turn, Maddox muttered, rising to his feet. Renee stopped talking. There was no use. She let her head rest gently against the bumper, her cheek still throbbing. the blood from her face dripping steadily down her neck. Malik had gone quiet, not because he felt better, but because something inside him had gone still. He'd retreated, mentally and emotionally, to the only safe place left: silence. And then, a sound, low at first, like a distant hum. Tires, coming fast, not from behind, but from ahead. Headlights pierced through the night like searchlights, slicing through the stillness. A black SUV, no hesitation, no turn signal, just movement, deliberate and fast. The vehicle didn't slow gently. It broke hard, tires screeching as it pulled into the shoulder. Doors opened before the engine even fully stopped, and Derek stepped out. He wore no uniform, no badge, just dark jeans, a black t-shirt, boots, and a presence that pulled the air out of the road. His hands were empty, but his stance was unmistakable. Calm, grounded, focused. The kind of calm that didn't come from words, but from experience. His eyes swept across the scene, first landing on Renee, bruised and bloodied, then on Malik, curled beside the bumper, and finally on the two officers still posturing like they had control. "Step away from my wife and son," he said. His voice was steady, too steady. Maddox instinctively straightened. Renaer shifted his weight. They didn't speak right away, because something deep inside told them this had changed. "This doesn't involve you," Maddox said carefully. "They're being investigated." Derek was already walking, slow, deliberate steps over gravel, not rushing, just moving, like gravity itself had chosen a side. Renaer moved to intercept. He raised a hand, maybe to stop Derek, maybe just to slow him down. It didn't matter. Derek caught his wrist midair and turned his body with a fluid motion that turned momentum into collapse. Renaer hit the ground hard, air gone from his lungs before he could react. He didn't get back up. Maddox reached for his holster, too slow. In 3 controlled steps, Derek was on him. He slapped the officer's arm upward just as the firearm cleared the holster. It flew from Maddox's grip, skidding under the patrol car. In the next breath, a punch struck Maddox in the ribs, another to the shoulder, and a third, clean hit to the thigh sent him stumbling. No hesitation. Derek grabbed him by the vest and slammed him against the SUV, hard enough to rattle the windows. "You hit my wife," Derek said, not loud, but low enough to silence the air around him. Then he drove an elbow into Maddox's core. The officer gasped, his hands scrambling against the door, trying to hold on. Another strike came fast, upward, open palm, catching him under the chin and dropping him to the ground. Legs gave out, body folded. And just like that, it was quiet again. Renee hadn't realized she was shaking until the dust around her started to settle. Maddox lay motionless. Renaer still hadn't moved. Derek stepped past them both and dropped to one knee beside Malik. The boy flinched. The sound of footsteps still meant fear. But when he looked up and saw him, everything cracked. The tears burst. His shoulders shook so hard he couldn't speak. Derek didn't try to stop the sobs. He didn't say anything at all. He just reached out, placed both hands gently on his son's arms, and lowered his head, whispering something soft, something just for him. Renee crawled toward them, still on her knees, still bleeding, still shaking, but alive and no longer alone. Renee dragged herself the last few feet across the gravel, her arms trembling. Derek looked up, and for the first time since he arrived, something shifted in his expression. It wasn't fury. It was something older, heavier, the kind of helpless rage that builds in a man when he realizes he wasn't there in time. She reached for his hand. "I'm okay," she whispered. "He cuffed me, but I'm okay." Derek's eyes didn't leave her face. "Your cheek, I'll live," she said. "Malik needs you." "I've got him." Malik's hands were still restrained. Derek examined the cuffs briefly, stood without a word, walked over to Renaer's belt, and took the key. He returned, knelt, and unlocked the cuffs with quiet efficiency. The moment the metal released, Malik collapsed into his father's arms, wrapping both of them tight around his neck. Derek held him close, steady, firm, protective. Behind them, Maddox stirred and began crawling toward his weapon. Derek stood and stepped down, directly on the man's hand. "Move again," he said quietly, "and you'll wish you hadn't." Maddox stopped. Frozen. Something in Derek's voice made it clear. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And for the first time, Maddox believed him. No backup arrived, no sirens, just the soft hum of the SUV engine, and Malik's breathing, now steady again in the safety of his father's arms. Derek kept his boot on the officer's hand a second longer, just long enough to make sure the point landed, then stepped away. Maddox didn't resist. He didn't speak. He just lay there, breath shallow, eyes low. Renair was still flat on the ground, blinking slowly up at the sky as if looking for answers it couldn't give. Derek turned back to Renee. He knelt beside her, gently touching her face, assessing the bruise, the cut, the line of dried blood across her cheek. She tried to brush it off, but he caught her wrist, held it gently. "They'll be looking for us now," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "We won't be here when they do." He helped her up first, then turned and lifted Malik into his arms. The boy didn't resist. He didn't ask to walk. He just held on, tight. Fingers curled into the back of his father's shirt like they were holding on to the only safe thing left in the world. Renee opened the SUV's rear door, brushing aside Malik's broken tablet and unfolding the old blanket he always kept there for long rides. Derek laid him down gently, leaned in close, and whispered, "Stay low, okay? Whatever happens, stay down and stay quiet." Malik nodded, his voice no more than a breath. "Are they coming back?" "Not if I can help it," Derek said. Renee climbed into the front passenger seat, wincing as she pulled the belt across her ribs, the fabric torn and dust-streaked. Derek circled the SUV, glanced one final time at the two officers still on the ground, then slid behind the wheel. The tires spun gravel into the air as they pulled off. No hesitation, just distance, just escape, just the road stretching ahead like a lifeline. No one spoke. Outside, the world was dark, lit only by the faint reflections of distant towns and the flicker of roadside markers in the headlights. Renee held a tissue to her face, her eyes flicking to the mirror every few seconds to make sure Malik was still breathing, still okay, still with them. Derek kept both hands steady on the wheel. His eyes never left the road, but his mind was moving fast, tracking, planning, calculating what came next. "Where are we going?" Renee finally asked. "Franklin's cabin," Derek said. "Middle of nowhere. Solar power. No towers. He's out of state. We'll have it to ourselves." "How long do we have?" "Maybe 3 hours. Before someone checks the cruiser footage. Before they start pulling plates." Renee leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "They're going to spin it. Say I was hysterical. Say you were violent. Say you attacked them." "They always do," Derek answered. "That's why we don't wait for their version. We make our own." "We don't have video." "Not yet, but there might be dash cam on their car, maybe traffic cams nearby. I'll find them. And then we release it, all of it. Media, lawyers, whoever needs to see it. But we need something they can't erase." Silence settled again, just the soft hum of tires, the weight of adrenaline leaving their bones. In the back seat, Malik finally dozed off. Even in sleep, his hands twitched, fists still curling, like his body hadn't caught up to the fact that it was over. "You saved us," Renee said. Derek shook his head slowly. "Too late." "No," she whispered. "You came." Derek didn't respond, but the way his grip shifted slightly on the steering wheel said everything. They reached the cabin just before midnight. It was tucked deep into the woods, hidden by a narrow gravel path between two crooked mailboxes and a wall of wild brush that hadn't seen care in years. The place was small, worn down by time, and quiet. Too quiet for anyone to stumble across unless they were looking. Derek parked beneath the trees and killed the engine. The silence that followed was thick, like the whole night had finally exhaled. He helped Renee out first, guiding her gently inside. She lowered herself onto the couch with a sharp breath as pain flared across her ribs. Then, Derek returned to the SUV, lifted Malik from the back seat, and carried him inside, laying him gently on the spare bed in the corner. The boy didn't stir. From the couch, Renee watched in silence, her fingertips resting lightly on the swollen edge of her face. "They'll say we ran," she murmured, "and they'll use that." "We did," Derek replied, "but we're not running from the truth." She looked up at him. "Then what do we do?" Derek crossed the room and crouched beside her. "We show the world what happened, on our terms, in our words, and when they come looking, because they will, we'll be ready." Morning arrived without a sunrise. Gray light filtered weakly through the trees, leaving the cabin dim and still. No engines, no radios, just the sound of wind brushing against the siding and the soft rhythm of Malik's breathing as he slept. Derek had been awake for hours. He stood near the window, one hand pressed against the frame, the other holding a notepad filled with sketches and notes. He hadn't stopped moving. He couldn't afford to. Sleep had tried to creep in once, somewhere after 2 a.m., but he pushed it back with cold water, motion, and the steady hum of focus. He'd mapped out likely dash cam backup locations, traced the patrol route from memory, and dug through a lockbox of old gear he'd stashed here months ago, just in case. Behind him, Renee stirred. She didn't sit up right away, just shifted, pressing a hand against her side. Bruises were blooming dark beneath her blouse. Her face was still swollen, the dried blood now forming a harsh crease down her cheek. She didn't complain, didn't ask for anything. When she finally sat upright, it was slow and silent, the kind of pain you keep to yourself. Derek turned. "Do you need anything?" "I need that footage," she said, her voice still rough with sleep. "That's all I need." He nodded. "I think I know where to look." The cruiser. It came from the district lot on Mallister. They use older tech. Every vehicle still backs up manually when it returns. If we're lucky, that drive wasn't wiped yet. Renee ran a hand down her face. "You think it recorded?" "If the lights were on, it started automatically. Maddox wasn't careful, he was arrogant. That camera may have caught everything. Their faces, what they did, the strike, the cuffs, all of it. But we can't ask for it," she said. "Not officially." "I'm not asking," Derek replied quietly. "I'm taking." She blinked. "You're not walking into that lot by yourself. No cameras in the overflow yard," he explained. "The building has blind spots. I know where the crates are. If the backup's still there, I can find it." "Derek!" she began, her voice warning. "It's the only way," he said. "We don't get to win with words. Not this time. We need proof. Raw, clear, undeniable." She didn't argue, but she didn't look away either. "Then I'm going with you." "No, you're not." "I'm not staying behind while you walk into a police facility alone," she said, standing slowly. "You've got Malik to think about, and I've got you." He opened his mouth to protest, but she was already moving stiffly toward the kitchen, every step laced with pain she refused to show. He didn't push it. He knew her well enough to understand. She wasn't backing down. By late afternoon, Malik was awake and sitting at the table, picking quietly at a bowl of oatmeal. He hadn't said much all day, just soft replies, short glances. His eyes kept flicking toward the windows, like he expected someone to burst in. Renee knelt beside him, brushing a hand gently through his hair. "We're going to get the video, baby," she whispered. "The one from the police car. It'll show what they did." "Will it show them hurting you?" Malik asked, his voice so faint she barely caught it. "Yes," she said softly, "it will." "Will they believe it?" She hesitated. "They'll have to." Derek set a backpack on the counter with a quiet thud. It was packed already. Gloves, a burner phone, an old laptop, spare clothes, and an encrypted drive. No weapons. This wasn't revenge. This was about truth. And now it was time to go get it. This wasn't a mission that needed force. It needed precision. They left the cabin just before sunset, sticking to back roads, circling more than once to be sure they weren't followed. Derek parked 2 blocks away from the department lot, in an abandoned area behind shuttered shops and broken windows. Renee stayed low as they slipped through the alley, her body aching, but adrenaline numbing the worst of it. The yard was dim, A few tall floodlights cast stretched shadows across rows of old cruisers lined up behind chain-link fencing. The back gate was secured with a rusted lock. Derek made quick work of it. No noise, no struggle, just a quiet click, and they were through. Inside, everything was just as he remembered. Half-retired vehicles, out-of-service units, and long-forgotten stacks of tech. The far garage was the target, the one where backups were still stored. He moved with purpose, scanning shadows, counting paces. Renee followed close, watching his six, keeping quiet. At the storage room door, he eased it open just enough to squeeze inside. The air was thick, stale. Shelves bowed under the weight of old drives and tangled cables. Derek's fingers moved fast, matching call logs to unit numbers, tracking VINs, cross-referencing. There, the cruiser from last night. He located the dash cam's external unit, old model, clunky, easy to pull. He slid it from the dock, wrapped it in a cloth, and slipped it into the bag. They vanished out the same way they'd come, controlled, silent, unseen. By the time they returned to the cabin, the moon was high. Malik was still asleep under his blanket, one of Renee's scarves bundled beside him. Derek placed the drive gently on the table. "If it's on here," he said, "they can't spin their way out?" Renee nodded. "Let's see it." The drive clicked into the port. The sound was small, but in the still cabin, it felt loud. She sat forward, bracing her hands on either side of the laptop. Derek hovered just behind, arms crossed, his jaw locked tight. One desk lamp lit the table. Its flickering bulb cast sharp light across the screen. For a moment, nothing. Then a folder appeared. No label, no icon. Just a string of letters and numbers. 3 video files, each with a timestamp. Derek clicked the first. No audio. Just the inside of the cruiser. Maddox at the wheel. Renner in the passenger seat. Both sipping coffee. The dash clock blinked 9:31 p.m. The footage rolled. The lights came on, red and blue reflections flickering across the dashboard. The cruiser accelerated. A moment later, the SUV appeared ahead on the road, pulling to the shoulder. Renee didn't move, didn't speak, just stared, watching it all play out again in silence. There she was, her hands on the wheel, window rolling down, Maddox approaching. It felt surreal, like watching a memory that didn't belong to her. The second file started. This time, the dash cam outside, mounted above the windshield. The view was wide, gravel shoulder, side of the SUV, full angle of the stop. Everything was there. The dropped license, the walk-around. The back door flung open, Malik's head jerking up, his confusion, his fear, her own body hitting the ground, her voice, desperate, loud, cutting through the static. And then, the strike, quick, brutal, clear. Maddox's arm lashing forward, her head snapping back. No room for denial, no question of interpretation. Derek paused the video. No one spoke. Renee dropped her gaze to the keyboard. "They'll say I resisted," she said quietly, "that it was necessary." "Not after this," Derek replied. But even as he said it, her phone lit up. One buzz, then another, and another. She stood slowly, walked across the room and picked it up. Her stomach dropped before she even saw the messages. Texts from coworkers, unknown numbers, all saying the same thing. "Are you okay? Why did you run? They're saying you attacked them. You need to turn yourself in. It's all over the news." Derek's phone buzzed next. He stepped away, reading silently. One message made him stop cold. "There's a warrant," he said. "Assaulting officers, interfering with an investigation. They're calling it a manhunt." He looked up, met her eyes. They flipped it already. Renee was already back at the laptop, already reopening the video. "We leak it now," she said. "No lawyers, no media filters, just truth, raw and uncut." "They'll trace it," Derek warned. "Then we use the school account," she said. "The backup login. They won't catch it in time. You'll lose your job." "I already have," she replied. "Suspended this morning, no questions asked." He didn't argue. He copied the files, plugged in the clean laptop, moved fast, because time was already running out. They worked like they had a system, like they'd done this before. Derek handled the upload. Renee wrote the caption. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. This is what really happened. Watch it before it disappears. They used a burner signal, rerouted through a temporary IP tunnel and an old relay Derek had set up years ago, something he'd always hoped he'd never need. The progress bar crawled. Slow, heavy, like it understood what it carried. Renee paced near the window, arms wrapped around herself. Her cheeks still swollen, the blood long dried, but never fully wiped away. Malik slept nearby, curled under a blanket, unaware of how quickly the world had turned against them again, while he dreamed. When the upload finished, Derek hit send. The file went live. He pushed the laptop aside and stared at the wall. "Now we wait," he said, his voice quiet. But the waiting wasn't silence. It was tension held just beneath the surface, like yelling into a canyon and waiting for the echo, not knowing what might come back. The first comments appeared fast, then the shares, but the tone wasn't what they expected. Some believed the headlines: former Navy SEAL ambushes officers during traffic stop. Others parroted news networks: family flees after resisting lawful stop. Renee refreshed the page and watched the view count climb. Hundreds, then thousands. But the comments were full of doubt. Accusations, people calling it fake, saying she faked her injuries, that Malik had been coached, that the footage was edited. Derek stood behind her, arms crossed, watching. They're not ready to believe it. "Then we keep pushing," she said. Her voice didn't shake. Even as their phones lit up again, more messages, more headlines, even as the fear began to circle them like a noose tightening by the hour. She meant it, because the truth was out now, and eventually, someone would have to look it in the eye. The wind changed sometime during the night. Renee noticed it first, the way it moved sharper through the trees, rattling the shutters like something trying to get in. Derek noticed too, but he said nothing. He stayed near the back window, one hand on the frame, the other hovering just near the curtain, watching, listening. By dawn, the video had passed 1 million views. With it came pressure, not from strangers online, but from places that mattered. Real sources, real threats. 3 burner phones they'd activated began buzzing on staggered intervals, picking up chatter from quiet corners of the internet, leaks from inside departments, and whispered warnings from people who couldn't speak openly. Search patterns were shifting, patrols reassigned, unmarked vehicles headed down rural roads that weren't even on GPS. At 8:27 a.m., Derek saw it. Movement. He didn't speak, just raised a single finger toward Renee. She froze mid-motion, folding Malik's sweatshirt by the couch. She turned her head slightly toward the window. A white pickup, unmarked, civilian model, creeping slowly down the dirt path to the cabin. No sirens, no lights, but something about the way it moved made her skin go cold. Derek let the curtain fall. "We have to move, now." Renee didn't hesitate. She crossed the room in 3 steps and knelt by Malik, who was just beginning to wake beneath the blanket. "Baby, we have to go, right now, no questions, just shoes on and listen to Dad." Malik blinked, confused, but her voice cut through the fog. He obeyed. Derek shut the laptop, slid the backup drive into a pouch, and zipped it beneath his shirt. The main power had been off since they arrived, but the solar rig in the back still carried a signal. He'd have to disconnect it manually later if they made it out. Renee grabbed the go bag from behind the couch, tossed 2 water bottles inside, then turned toward the back door. But Derek didn't lead them to the car. He pointed to the crawl space instead, a half-hidden storm shelter tucked beneath the foundation of the cabin, obscured by old siding, pine needles, and leaves, built for food storage during bad weather. Now, it had a new purpose. He peeled back the panel and ushered them inside. First Renee, carefully. Then Malik, lowered gently into the cold space beneath the floorboards. It was damp, tight, smelled like earth and stone. But it was dark, and it was quiet. Derek followed last, pulling the panel closed behind him, sealing them in from the inside. Above them, footsteps. 3 sets. Boots, not shoes. Not loud enough to be confident. Not quiet enough to be friendly. A muffled knock echoed against the front door. Silence. Then a second knock. Sharper. A voice followed. Casual, practiced. "Just checking on the property. Anyone home?" Another voice replied, closer to the rear of the cabin. "No tire tracks. Looks clean." Derek pressed one hand against the low ceiling of the crawl space. eyes fixed on the thin sliver of light leaking through a crack above. Malik huddled close to Renee, breath shallow, one hand covering his mouth. She gently ran her palm along his back, slow and steady, trying to calm the tremble she could feel under his skin. Then a sound, dragging. A boot scraped across the porch overhead. Silence again. Renee's hand tightened on Malik's shirt. Another voice, this one lower, muttered just loud enough to hear. Thought I saw something from the road. Thermal's cold. Place looks dead. A pause. Then, keep looking. Footsteps shifted. Slower now, measured, moving deeper toward the trees behind the cabin. Derek glanced at his watch, silently counting. Not for silence, but for pattern, for rhythm, for distance. 10 minutes. 15. Finally, the panel creaked. The light outside had changed, softer now, more distant. He peeked out first, careful. The forest was quiet. The truck was gone. He helped Malik out. Then Renee, one at a time, each movement careful, each step quiet. They didn't speak until the cabin door was locked behind them. That wasn't patrol, Renee said, her eyes still fixed on the door. No, Derek agreed. That wasn't a wellness check. That was a cleanup team. Looking to erase, not investigate. Malik looked up, his voice no more than a whisper. Are we still safe here? Renee knelt in front of him, cupping his face. For now, but we're not staying. Derek crossed the room and set the backup drive on the table. We move in 1 hour, he said. No roads, no signals. We lay low, but we don't stop. Renee nodded. Because now we know how far they're willing to go. The new hideout was barely a structure, an abandoned equipment shed on the edge of an old orchard 30 miles south, forgotten by its owners, reclaimed by time. Dust coated everything. The air was heavy with the scent of rust and dry grass, but it was shelter, and more importantly, it was invisible. They'd driven there in complete darkness, devices off, signals dead, no trail left behind. Now, a day after the near discovery, exhaustion finally crept in. Derek sat against a wooden wall, arms draped over his knees, watching a shaft of sunlight cut through a split in the siding. The light hit the dirt floor like a crack across a map, narrow, uncertain. Renee rested nearby, Malik curled up in her lap, wrapped in one of her old sweaters. He hadn't cried again, but he hadn't spoken much either. He just watched, listened, quiet, alert. Derek hadn't said much since they arrived, not because he had nothing to say, but because too much had already been said. The footage was out. The truth had been shown. But they were still fugitives, still painted as threats, still hunted, even as the world began to shift. He pulled out one of their last working phones, checked the signal, and scrolled through the encrypted contact list. He found the name, an old friend, one who owed him, one who had never broken trust. He called, 2 rings, then a voice. Derek? Where the hell are you, man? Doesn't matter, Derek said. I need to know what's happening. On the ground. What are they saying? A pause, then a deep breath. It's chaos. The video blew up. First social, then local news, then a national anchor ran the full clip, uncut, no edits, no commentary, just truth. Derek leaned back against the wall, letting that sink in. There are protests downtown, hundreds of people, started at City Hall, now at the courthouse, chanting Malik's name, holding signs with Renee's face, bruised, bleeding, next to badge numbers. When the mayor tried to downplay it this morning, it backfired. Crowd got louder. Windows smashed. Police cars hit. Fire crews had to step in after midnight. Renee looked over sharply. Derek nodded gently to let her know. He was listening to all of it. The governor made a statement, promised a full review. Nobody bought it. And us? You're still flagged, still wanted. Warrants haven't been dropped yet. But the pressure's building. Civil rights lawyers are calling it retaliation. They're saying the charges won't hold. Derek exhaled slowly. Thanks, Travis. You didn't have to answer. Are you kidding? The man said. I've known you 20 years. They should be asking you for help, not chasing your family through the woods. Just be careful. It's not over. They're getting desperate. Derek ended the call and set the burner phone down beside him, rubbing both hands over his face, then dragging them through his hair. The barn was silent, except for birds shifting in the rafters and the soft, steady breath of Renee and Malik nearby. Renee shifted closer. They know the truth now. Not everyone, Derek said, but enough. Then we can't just keep hiding, she replied. If we disappear, they'll twist it. Say silence means guilt. Derek looked at her, really looked. So what's the play? Walk into a precinct and hand ourselves over to the same people who let this happen? No, she said, sitting upright, voice steady. We go above them. Above? To the ones who don't want a riot in every major city. We go to the district attorney's office, the civilian oversight board, someone not wearing Maddox's badge. Derek watched her closely as she continued. We offer them something. He raised an eyebrow. What exactly? Peace. She let the word land, then explained. We tell them we'll use our voice to calm things. No fires, no broken windows. We ask our supporters to hold the line, but in return, they drop the charges. They arrest the officers, and they open a real investigation. Derek leaned back, considering it. And if they say no? Then we give the media the second video. He frowned. There isn't a second video. There can be. She opened the laptop and pulled up a folder she'd quietly been building. Rough cuts, voiceover narration, stills of Malik's bruised wrists, her own bloodied face, even footage from a public town hall where the police chief had promised transparency. It was raw, but it was real, and it was damning. If they want to avoid what's coming, they'll have to pick a side, quietly but decisively. Derek nodded. The idea was risky, but it felt right, like locking in a final round before the trigger is pulled. We set the meeting, he said, on our terms, not theirs. And we don't go in alone, Renee added. We bring a camera, a witness, someone they can't silence. And if they try anyway, Derek said, the whole world will see it happen. They sat in silence a moment longer, not from fear, but focus. They weren't just surviving now, they were about to fight back. The barn stayed quiet, but the air was heavy, tense. Something was closing in. The first rays of sun spilled through the cracks in the wall, casting jagged stripes of light across the dirt floor. Derek sat near the back, elbows resting on his knees, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it was daring him to press call. Renee leaned against a post beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon through the slats. Malik lay asleep again beneath a makeshift blanket, finally still, finally resting. No one had spoken since they'd left the cabin. It wasn't fear, it was calculation. They both knew what had to happen next. Neither wanted to say it first. Derek tapped the screen twice. The call rang, once, twice, then answered. Coleman. Deputy Mayor Grant. A pause. You're not calling to turn yourself in. No, Derek said. I'm calling to give you a choice. Grant didn't speak, so Derek continued. You've seen the footage. You know exactly what happened to my wife and son. You've seen what's happening in the streets, and you know it's only building. Grant exhaled. You've put us in a very difficult position. No, Derek said evenly. Your officers did that. I'm offering you a way out. Another pause. Then the voice on the other end dropped slightly. You're asking us to sacrifice 2 officers in front of a crowd. I'm not asking, Derek replied. I'm offering you a deal. You take action and we release a joint statement. We say we believe in process. We agree to cooperate with oversight. You keep control. We get justice. We can't just drop charges. It's exactly what you can do, Derek said. Because if you don't, there's a second video. Annotated, synced, with your police chief's public statements stitched into every frame. You think the protests are loud now? If that goes public, everything burns. I don't respond well to threats. This isn't a threat, Derek said calmly. It's a decision. You either pick a side, or the public will do it for you. From beside him, Renee didn't say a word, but she was watching, his shoulders, his breathing, the tension in his arms, but not in his voice. He hadn't flinched once. The silence stretched long. Then Grant finally spoke. What are your terms? Derek answered without hesitation. public dismissal of all charges against my wife and me, immediate suspension of Officers Maddox and Renair, a formal public announcement of an external investigation into use of force misconduct within 48 hours. No backrooms, no secret deals. Renee's voice was steady, final. In return, we go public. We tell the truth. We ask for calm. We tell people to stop burning buildings and start paying attention. Then what? Derek asked. We just disappear? No, she said. We leave cleared, quietly, with the truth on record. You think people will calm down just because we ask? I think they'll listen to a mother, she said. A lot more than they'll listen to a press secretary. Derek exhaled. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. Then the phone rang. He answered without hesitation. Grant's voice was careful, controlled. We've reviewed everything. The district attorney has agreed. Charges will be dropped. Officers Maddox and Renair will be suspended pending a formal investigation. Derek leaned forward, tone tight. So that's it? Almost, Grant replied. There's one condition. Renee tensed. Derek didn't speak. You meet in person, Grant continued. No cameras, no press. Just you, your wife, the district attorney, the city's legal advisor, and me. We sit down. You guarantee no further escalation. You ask your supporters to hold the line. And in return, we make it official, Grant said. Publicly, on record. Derek's voice was calm, but firm. I'm not walking into a trap. You have my word. That doesn't mean anything. It should, Grant replied, because if this falls apart, the system takes the fall, and you know it. But to reverse it completely, we need your word, your face. You sit down. You look us in the eye. You want justice, not spectacle? Show up. Derek said nothing. He ended the call and sat still, the weight of the decision settling over his shoulders like armor. Renee broke the silence. They changed the deal. Now they want us in the room. She looked down at Malik, asleep, peaceful, for the first time in days. Then back up at Derek. That's too much risk. I know. You think they'll actually follow through? No, he said. Then why are we even considering it? Because if we don't, they bury it. They say we backed out. They say we're the problem. And if we go, she said, her voice low, they could spin it again. Say we threatened them. Say we staged it. Say anything. They won't, Derek said. Not with what's happening outside, not now. It's too hot. Renee looked away. The silence was thick. You're sure? No, Derek said, but we didn't come this far to blink. He crossed to her and knelt beside Malik, gently placing a hand on his son's back. Then quietly, you stay here with Travis's wife. Renee looked at him like he'd lost his mind. I'm not letting you walk in there alone. You're not, he said. We go together. But we bring someone, not a camera, not a microphone, a person, someone they can't shut up or buy out, someone who won't blink either. She nodded slowly. I'll make the call. 2 hours later, 1:03 a.m., they pulled into a downtown parking garage 3 blocks from the library. The streets were empty. Curfew had kept most people inside. Patrols passed slowly, but without urgency. Overhead lights buzzed faintly as Renee stepped out first, scanning the lot. She helped Derek adjust the lining of his coat. Inside, a burner phone was recording audio on a loop, uploading in 60-second intervals. Waiting by the stairwell, their contact. A retired judge, trusted, unshakable. A man who owed Derek more than one favor, and understood exactly what this meeting meant. 1:32 a.m. South Wing entrance, public library. The building was silent. The air inside smelled like old paper and waxed floors. Every hallway echoed with their steps. The reading room had been cleared. Renovation signs still taped to the walls. The blinds were drawn tight. A single long table stretched through the center of the space. 3 people were already seated. No uniforms, just suits. Derek and Renee stepped in, together. Not alone, not begging, and not afraid. No handshakes, no introductions, just silence. Derek and Renee sat at the table. The judge was beside them. Across from them, Grant, the deputy mayor, the district attorney, and the city's legal advisor. Grant spoke first, voice clipped and precise. This meeting satisfies the terms. Do you still intend to de-escalate the public response once charges are formally dropped? Derek didn't blink. Yes, once it's public, not before. And the unreleased footage? The DA asked, leaning forward slightly. It stays locked, Derek said, unless this deal breaks. The DA nodded. We have the paperwork. If you agree, charges dropped, warrant vacated, officers suspended pending formal arrest and public arraignment. Oversight investigation opens immediately. Do we have a deal? Renee looked at Derek. Derek looked at the judge. Then he nodded. You have a deal. No one smiled. No one relaxed. No one reached for a pen. But something had shifted. This time, the system wasn't deciding for them. It was responding to them. Morning came without sunlight. Just a soft gray sky pressing low over the city, like the world had exhaled after holding its breath too long. In Travis's living room, Derek stood silently in front of the TV, arms crossed as the anchor read from the screen. This morning, the mayor's office has confirmed that all charges against Derek and Renee Coleman have been officially dropped, citing overwhelming video evidence and procedural misconduct. In a related move, officers Brent Maddox and Kyle Renner have been taken into custody and are now facing multiple charges, including felony assault, unlawful detainment, and falsification of official records. The arrests follow mounting public outcry and the viral spread of video footage released earlier this week. At the kitchen table, Renee sat with her hand resting gently on Malik's shoulder. The boy stared at the TV, cereal forgotten, his fingers gripping the edge of his chair. They said my name, he whispered. Renee leaned down and kissed the top of his head. Yes, she said softly. They did, and they won't forget it. On screen, the broadcast cut to a pre-recorded press conference. The police chief stood between two plainclothes officers. No slogans, no spin. Just this. As of 6:45 a.m., both officers have been taken into custody without incident. The department is cooperating fully with the external commission. Derek exhaled, but the tension in his body didn't break. Not yet. Too much had already happened. Too much still ahead. But something had landed. Not a promise, not a compromise, a reckoning. That afternoon, the family arrived at the courthouse, not in custody, but under escort. Not because they were fugitives anymore, but because the city wanted the public to see them. Present, visible. They didn't dress for cameras. Renee wore jeans and a jacket that still bore faint stains from that night. Derek wore the same boots, the same posture. Malik walked between them, holding both their hands, his eyes scanning the lines of reporters and supporters behind barricades. Inside, the noise faded. The air grew still. In a side hallway, they were led into a quiet observation room. On the other side of the glass, Maddox and Renner, cuffed, seated at an intake bench. Two officers processed paperwork without a word. Neither Maddox nor Renner looked at the mirror. Renee stood still for a long time. Then, without turning away from the glass, do they even remember what they did to him? Derek didn't look at her. He looked straight through the mirror. They remember, he said. They just didn't expect to be here. Renee stepped forward. Before Derek could stop her, she opened the door and walked into the room. Both men looked up. Maddox stood halfway before the guard motioned him back. Renner didn't move. Renee's voice was calm, measured. You threw me to the ground in front of my son. You hit me while he watched, and you dragged a 10-year-old like he was a threat. Maddox didn't reply. She kept going. You thought no one would believe us, that no one would care, that because you wore a badge and we had brown skin, the story would write itself. Still no answer. She took another step forward. You looked my son in the face, and you didn't see a child. And now the country is looking at you, and they see exactly what you are. Finally, Renner looked up. I didn't hit you, he said quietly. I didn't lay a hand on your kid. No, Renee replied. But you didn't stop it either. Derek appeared in the doorway. Malik stood just behind him. The boy didn't speak. He just stared through the glass at the two men who had once made him afraid. His fists clenched, but his voice was steady. "You scared me, but I'm not scared now." Maddox blinked. That was all. They left the room in silence. Outside, the crowd had grown, hands clapping, signs raised. But it wasn't rage anymore. It was relief, a shift. The city hadn't healed, but something had changed. The lie had cracked, and the truth, raw, heavy, undeniable, had slipped through. The family walked down the courthouse steps, not as fugitives, not as victims, but as proof. Proof that justice doesn't come easy, but sometimes it does come. Back home it was quiet again, but not the quiet of fear. The kind that settles, when something heavy has finally been lifted. Renee stood in the kitchen, fingers wrapped around a warm mug, staring out at the same trees she'd seen 100 times before, though never quite like this. At the table, Malik was sketching again. Capes, heroes, figures with wide stances and strong hands, shielding someone small from something dark. He didn't flinch when the doorbell rang, didn't ask if the lights should stay off. He just looked at his father, who said calmly, "It's just the neighbor, dropping off groceries." And Malik went back to drawing. That was the difference. Later, Derek and Renee sat on the porch, the garden blooming like it hadn't noticed the city burned for a week. "They're talking about new oversight," Derek said. "They're calling it the Coleman Initiative." Renee raised a brow. "Sounds like something you name after a school." He smiled faintly. "Probably just for show, but people are watching now." They sat in silence as the neighborhood moved, dogs being walked, kids playing ball. Life, ordinary and unbothered. "They know our faces now," Derek said, "but not as suspects." Renee rested her head on his shoulder. "You think it's really over?" He took a long pause. "No," he said finally, "but I think we're safe, and I think the right people are scared now." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Inside, Malik's voice called out, "Can I have lunch early?" The most ordinary question in the world, and for a moment, they just sat still, listening, like proof that normal was finding its way back. That evening, they sat together on the couch, lights low, a movie playing. None of them even knew which one. Malik lay curled between them, his mother's hand brushing his shoulder. "Are they really gone?" he asked softly. Derek glanced at Renee, then down at his son. "They're not gone," he said, "but they're where they belong. And they can't hurt us anymore." Malik nodded. He didn't ask again. Outside, the street was quiet. Not tense, not waiting, just quiet. And that finally was enough.